Let me ask you something simple but very real. Have you ever sat in front of a blank page or canvas or screen and felt like you were staring into yourself? Not just at the absence of ideas, but at the questions underneath the silence. Why am I even doing this? Does this matter? Does any of it lead anywhere? If you've ever had thoughts like that, you're not alone. Every artist, from beginners to masters, has battled this strange fog where motivation slips away, and the work starts feeling heavier than it should. Let's start with a weird truth. Motivation in art is not the same as motivation in other parts of life. If you want to do your taxes, you can motivate yourself with a deadline or a fear of penalties. If you want to clean your kitchen, you can use a checklist. But when it comes to art, you're dealing with something deeper, something philosophers have been arguing about for centuries. When you create art, you're not just doing a task, you're revealing a little piece of who you are. That's why it feels scary. That's why it feels personal. Existentialists like Sartre would say that creating anything is an act of self-definition, a way of choosing who you are, which means avoiding your art often feels like avoiding yourself. No wonder motivation gets tangled. You can't create anything meaningful without dancing with the unknown. But humans hate uncertainty. The Stoics wrote about this constantly. Our brain wants safety, predictability, clarity. Art gives you none of that up front. Also, art exposes the gap between vision and ability. Every artist knows this pain. You imagine something beautiful, your hands cannot yet make it. This is what psychologist Lev Vygotsky called the zone of proximal development, the gap between what you can imagine and what you can currently do. That gap is frustrating, and frustration, if unmanaged, kills motivation. One thing about art is slow. Philosophers from Aristotle to Kierkegaard's argued that anything meaningful requires long obedience in the same direction. Art is the same. It grows slowly in layers. Motivation evaporates when we try to speed up a process that was never meant to be fast. So if you felt like your motivation behaves strangely, that's because creating arts isn't just a task. It's a mirror. One of the biggest killers of motivation is the feeling that everything has to be good. So create practice sessions that don't count. Athletes do drills, musicians do scales, writers free write, make things that don't matter, so your art can matter again. Motivation isn't just psychological, it's environmental. And here's where the philosophy comes in. Your environment is a silent conversation between you and who you want to be. If your sketchbook is in a drawer, motivation decreases. If it's on your table, motivation increases. Simplicity is a virtue, both spiritually and practically. Create a space that makes you want to enter. Whether it's a corner of your bedroom, a desk, a cafe, or a digital tablet, your creative space should feel slightly sacred, not precious but intentional. Think of it like a temple for your imagination. Another very important thing you need to do: protect your attentions like it's your soul. Notifications are the enemy of flow. Flow is the engine of motivation. You don't have to disappear for 3 hours. Even 20 minutes without interruption creates more satisfaction than scrolling for an hour. There's a reason monks retreat into silence. Silence is fertile ground for creativity. Every artist battles resistance, that invisible force that pushes you away from the work. Steven Pressfield famously personified it as the resistance, a force that grows stronger the more your art matters to you. Why does resistance exist? Because art requires vulnerability, and your ego is terrified of vulnerability. The Stoics said that humans avoid what threatens their sense of self. Art does exactly that. It tests the limits of who you are. Remember, fear is not the enemy. It's the compass. If a piece scares you, it means it matters, which means it's a direction worth pursuing. Joseph Campbell wrote, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." Your fear is often a map to the work you're meant to create. Failure isn't failure, it's friction. Every piece that fails is really an iteration, a stepping stone, a lab experiment. Japanese philosophy calls this shoshin, the beginner's mind, a willingness to start again, without ego. Every time you create with shoshin, motivation becomes lighter. We romanticize the lone artist in the studio, but historically, that's a myth. Artists thrived in groups. The Impressionists, the Surrealists, the Harlem Renaissance, the Bauhaus, hip-hop collectives. Motivation multiplies in community. Find people who understand the struggle. Not necessarily people who praise your work, but people who get what it means to wrestle with ideas. Art philosopher Alain de Botton says humans need emotional companionship, not just technical skills. A single friend you check in with weekly can do more for your motivation than 100 tutorials. Share your work in progress. Not for validation, but for connection. When another person sees your half-finished sketch, something subtle happens. Your work becomes a dialogue, not a monologue. Motivation grows through conversation. Let's talk about the hardest moments. When you feel burned out, numb, or disconnected from your work. Here's a truth many artists don't want to admit. Sometimes the soul needs rest, not discipline. Burnout isn't a lack of motivation, it's a lack of oxygen. When you feel this way, rest, walk, switch mediums, read poetry, engage with nature, go see other people's art, refill the inner well. Philosopher Hannah Arendt believed that humans need states of non-doing to return to meaningful action. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is stop. This is not laziness, it is incubation. Creativity needs emptiness to grow. You stay motivated by remembering why you create. Not for fame, not for applause, not for validation. You create because you notice things other people overlook. You feel the world intensely. You have something to say. You want to make meaning. You want to leave a trace. You want to understand yourself. You want to understand life. Artists are translators of the invisible. You take feelings and turn them into form. You take chaos and give it structure. You take the raw material of being human and make it shareable. That matters. Even if nobody sees it today, even if nobody sees it this year. Art is a long conversation with the future. Your job is just to keep talking.